Okay, so today we're diving into Syrah.
Or Shiraz.
Yeah, Shiraz, right. That's the Aussie
You
term.
got it.
And I think everyone knows, like, it's the same grape, but obviously some pretty interesting differences depending on where it's grown.
Exactly.
So we've got a really great set of sources here that get into, well, everything,
A
basically.
whole 9 yards.
Yeah, the history, like how it's actually cultivated, the unique wines it makes. And we're focusing on, well, two of the big names, right?
The Rhône Valley, of course.
France, yeah, classic.
In Australia.
We're at Shiraz and really making a name for itself.
Absolutely, yeah. Two iconic regions.
And what we want to do today for you is, I think, go beyond just the surface level.
Yeah. We're not just comparing and contrasting for the sake of it.
Right. It's about finding those connections, too.
What makes this grape so fascinating?
And so versatile.
Right. It can be so many things.
And you shared these sources because, well, you want that in-depth understanding.
But without getting bogged down.
Exactly. And that's what we're aiming for today.
Distilling it down to the good stuff.
The really intriguing insights, yeah. So where should we start? I mean, this grape, Syrah, Shiraz, it's almost like a chameleon, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Adapting to different terroirs, different climates.
And reflecting that in the wines.
Producing such a diverse range of styles.
Okay, so that's kind of the overarching theme here. We're going to really focus on two regions.
Right. The Rhône Valley and Australia.
And not just where they are on a map.
But how the vineyards are actually managed.
Yeah, and the winemaking too.
Absolutely. The crucial decisions in the winery.
Because that's what shapes the wine in the end.
It all comes down to that.
So I guess a good place to start might be with a bit of history.
Yeah, a little background.
Syrah, as we know it, well, it's got this long history, right?
Particularly in the Rhône Valley.
It's kind of its home.
Yeah, think of appellations like Côte Rôtie.
Ooh, I love saying that.
Which means roasted slope, by the way.
Oh, yeah, right. And they can even blend in a little Viognier sometimes.
Up to 20%.
Interesting. And then Hermitage, of course.
On its granite hill.
So prestigious.
Absolutely.
And, you know, these regions have been doing this for centuries.
Generations of knowledge.
Yeah, honing their craft.
Really understanding the grape in its place.
So let's talk about place.
Terroir. Right.
The Rhône Valley isn't just one big area.
You've got the northern Rhône.
And the southern Rhône.
Distinct differences.
So the north is more continental, right?
Yeah, distinct seasons.
Warmer summers, cooler winters.
And the soils are predominantly granite and schist.
Okay, so that kind of terroir often leads to, well, what kind of Syrah?
You get these really elegant wines.
Yeah.
With structural finesse.
More of that, like, classic old world feel, right?
Absolutely.
And then you head south and everything changes.
It does. The southern Rhône is all Mediterranean climate.
Warmer overall, I'd imagine.
Less temperature variation, yeah. And a much wider range of soils.
So what are we talking about?
Clay, limestone, and those signature rolled stone.
Oh, yeah, like Châteauneuf-du-Pape?
Right. But Syrah is often just part of a blend there.
So lots of different players.
And don't forget the Mistral wind.
Oh, I've heard stories.
Powerful force that whips through the vineyards.
So it keeps things dry and healthy, right?
Exactly.
Preventing diseases and stuff.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've got different climates, different soils. That's going to have a big impact on how they actually grow the grapes, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about those viticultural practices, the actual vineyard management.
Well, particularly in the northern Rhône, the landscape itself is a challenge.
Yeah, steep slopes, right?
So terracing is huge.
Oh, I've seen pictures. It's quite impressive.
Really labor intensive.
But it's worth it for the wine, I guess.
It's all about quality.
And speaking of quality, low yields are a big focus too, aren't they?
Yeah, throughout the Rhône, they prioritize concentrated fruit flavors.
Not just quantity, but the intensity of the grapes.
Exactly.
And I read about something called Gobelets. What's that all about?
It's a traditional training system in the north.
So how they shape the vines?
Imagine the vine growing upright.
Like a vase.
Yeah, or a goblet, hence the name.
Okay, so it allows airflow.
And provides some natural shading.
So the grapes aren't getting scorched.
Especially important in their climate.
Smart. So form meets function.
And in the southern Rhône, you'll often see cordon de roya or Guyot training systems.
Different ways of managing the vine's growth.
Right, each with its own benefits.
And I know they also use other grape varieties sometimes, like we mentioned Viognier and Côte Rôtie.
For that aromatic lift.
And in Hermitage, they blend in Marsanne and Roussanne.
White grapes, adding complexity and texture.
Really interesting how they work with those blends.
And another point to make about the northern Rhône.
Go ahead.
because of those slopes.
Steep, right?
Manual harvesting is the norm.
Wow, talk about hands-on.
A real connection to the land.
Okay, so we followed the grapes from the soil to, well, the basket, basically.
Now it's off to the winery.
Time for the magic to happen.
The transformation.
So what are we seeing in the Rhône when it comes to winemaking?
It's a mix of old and new, really.
Tradition meets innovation.
Yeah, in the north, you'll see a lot of fermentation happening in cement or open-top wooden vats.
Adding to the texture and aroma?
Right, and they might even use whole bunches of grapes.
Whole bunches. What does that do?
Adds tannins, structure, those savory, peppery notes.
Interesting. And yeasts. I know that's a big deal.
It is. Some winemakers use indigenous yeasts,
Naturally present on the grapes.
while others prefer carefully selected commercial yeasts,
So, two different approaches.
each with its own philosophy.
And I read about cold pre-fermentation maceration. What's that all about?
That's mainly in the north, a gentle way to extract color and aroma before fermentation kicks off.
So getting a head start on those flavors.
And then oak aging, of course.
That's a given for most red wines.
But in the northern Rhone, they tend to use older barrels,
Or larger ones.
so the oak influence is more subtle.
Letting the grape and the terroir shine through.
Exactly, a real focus on purity.
So all this care, all this work, what does it create in the glass? What should we be looking for in a Northern Rhône Syrah?
Elegance, that's the first word that comes to mind.
Refined, I imagine.
Absolute.
Deep color, I'm guessing.
Deep ruby red, yeah. Aromas are intense.
Lots of dark fruit, I bet.
Blackberry, raspberry for sure.
But I know it's more than just fruit.
That black pepper spice is key.
The hallmark of Syrah.
Often you get violet too.
Floral notes.
And then smoke, even a touch of like cured meat.
Wow. Quite a complex bouquet.
And then on the palate, the tannins are refined.
Providing structure, but not aggressive.
Exactly.
And the acidity is lively.
Keeps the wine fresh and energetic.
And the finish.
Long and lingering.
So all those flavors just keep going.
It's a really complete wine.
So that's the Northern Rhône, the epitome of elegance, it seems. How does that compare to Syrah from the south?
Well, Southern Rhone Syrah is often part of a blend.
Like Côte du Rhône or Châteauneuf-du-Pape?
Right, so it's playing a different role.
And the style is generally
More full-bodied.
okay.
The fruit is riper.
More of a jammy character, maybe?
And the spice notes might be a bit warmer.
But it's hard to generalize too much, right?
Because those other grapes in the blend, Grenache, Mourvèdre, they all bring their own thing.
It becomes a whole other conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's Syrah in its historical home. Now let's hop on a plane and head to Australia.
Land of Shiraz. How did it even get there in the first place? I mean, it wasn't native to Australia, right?
No, it arrived in the 19th century.
Someone brought it over.
Yeah, James Busby in 1832.
With vine cuttings from Europe.
And what's amazing is how well it adapted.
It really thrived down under.
Found a new home and just exploded in popularity.
Australia's kind of like the Rhône Valley in a way, isn't it?
In what way?
Well, diverse terroirs.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just one giant hot desert.
Right. People think that sometimes.
There's so much variation.
So let's break it down. Key regions. What comes to mind?
Well, Barossa Valley is a classic.
Warm, dry climate, right? Yeah. And old vines, those gnarled ancient vines,
I've seen pictures. They're incredible.
planted in those clay soil.
And that combination gives you what kind of Shiraz?
Rich, concentrated wines.
Powerful stuff.
And then there's McLaren Vale.
Also warm, right?
Yeah, but with more of a maritime influence.
Oh, the ocean.
There's some freshness.
And McLaren Vale has a mix of soils too, right?
Clay, limestone, sandstone, it's all there.
So a different expression.
And we can't forget the Hunter Valley.
That's a bit of a unique one, isn't it?
It is. Warmer, more humid, sandy, and clay soils.
And the wines are?
Medium-bodied.
Okay, interesting.
But they age beautifully.
Develop all those complex flavors over time.
Yeah, Hunter Valley Shiraz is known for that.
And you even have cooler areas in Australia, right?
Oh, yeah, like the Yarra Valley and the Mornington Peninsula.
What are they doing down there?
More elegant, spicy Shiraz.
Reminds me of what we were saying about Northern Rhône Syrah.
It's a similar idea, climate and soil playing a big role.
So Australia's got this whole spectrum of Shiraz styles.
It really does.
Incredible diversity.
And the viticulture reflects that.
So how are they managing these vineyards? What are the key practices?
Well, one thing you see a lot of is irrigation,
Makes sense. It's a dry country.
especially in those warmer inland regions.
So they're controlling the water the vines get.
Managing water stress.
And they use different trellising systems too, right?
Yeah, VSP is very common, vertical shoot positioning.
So it's about how the vines are trained,
Right, optimizing the canopy.
making sure the grapes get enough sun.
And airflow, too.
And in some really hot areas, they even use shade nets. Oh, like putting a hat on the vines.
Protecting them from the intense sun.
Interesting. So different approaches depending on the region.
And a big contrast with the Rhône is the use of machinery.
Oh yeah, I remember we talked about all the manual labor in the north
In Australia, they're often harvesting mechanically,
because the terrain is generally flatter.
and they're working on a larger scale.
Makes sense. It's about efficiency.
Getting those grapes in at just the right time.
Okay, so we've covered the vineyards. Let's talk winemaking, the actual process in the winery.
Are you ready to get technical?
Bring it on.
Well, in Australia, you see a lot of modern techniques.
More technologically driven, maybe?
Yeah, they often use selected yeasts.
Not the naturally occurring ones.
Right, these are commercial yeasts chosen for specific characteristics.
So it's about consistency and predictability.
Exactly.
And temperature control is huge too, isn't it?
Yeah, they ferment in stainless steel tanks.
Keeping everything at the perfect temperature.
And maceration, that's another key variable.
The time the skins are in contact with the juice.
Right, they adjust it depending on the style they're going for.
So it impacts color, tannins, body,
All of that.
and oak, of course.
They use a lot of oak in Australia.
But different types than in the Rhône, right?
You see more new oak,
And American oak is common.
which gives those vanilla, coconut, sweet spice notes.
Okay, so a bolder oak influence in some cases.
It can be...
So we've got all these practices, all this technology. What's the end result? What does Australian Shiraz taste like?
Well, let's start with Barossa Valley, the big one.
Okay, I'm picturing a big gold wine.
Deep purple color.
Okay, I'm with you.
And the aromas are just bursting with ripe fruit.
Like what?
Blackberry, plum, those classic Shiraz notes.
You get hungry.
And then you get chocolate, licorice, those sweet baking spices from the oak.
Vanilla, cinnamon, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really inviting.
Full-bodied, rich texture.
I bet it coats your mouth.
It does. The tannins are soft, approachable,
Not too grippy or astringent.
and the acidity is balanced.
So everything is in harmony.
And sometimes you even get a touch of sweetness.
Residual sugar, right?
Just a hint, adding to that lushness.
Wow, it sounds delicious.
Barossa Shiraz is a real crowd pleaser.
Okay, so that's Barossa. Now, McLaren Vale, with that ocean influence,
What do you think it might be like?
well, maybe a bit fresher.
You got it. Still powerful fruit,
Plum, dark cherry, that chocolate is often there.
but with a bit more vibrancy,
Yeah, the maritime influence comes through.
and the structure is a bit firmer than Barossa, right?
The tannins are a bit more present.
But still well integrated.
Yeah, it's a really nice balance.
In Hunter Valley, the more age-worthy one.
What were your thoughts on that?
Well, we said it was medium-bodied, so maybe more red fruit.
You're right on track. Think cherry, raspberry.
And some spice and earthiness, too, I imagine.
Yeah, and what's cool is how it develops over time.
Those secondary and tertiary aromas.
You start to get savory notes, leathery notes, really complex.
A wine that tells a story.
Exactly.
And then those cooler regions, Yarra Valley, Mornington Peninsula, they're doing something different, right?
More elegant, spicy Shiraz.
Almost like Northern Rhône Syrah.
Yeah, the parallels are there.
It's fascinating how diverse Australian Shiraz can be.
It's a reflection of the country itself.
Okay, so we've covered the Rhône and Australia individually, but now let's really compare them side by side.
Head to head.
What are the big terroir differences that stand out?
Well, climate is a big one, as we've been saying.
Rhône is continental Mediterranean,
And Australia is generally warmer, drier.
but with exceptions, those cooler pockets
Yeah, can't forget those.
and soils.
Rhône is a lot of granite and schist.
Australia is more clay, limestone, sandstone.
Much more diverse.
And then there's topography, the shape of the land.
Northern Rhône, steep slopes, terraced vineyards.
Australia, more varied, but often gentler.
Yeah, flatter terrain.
And even within those climates, the temperature swings can be different.
The diurnal shift.
Daytime versus nighttime temperatures.
Exactly, and that impacts grape ripening, acidity.
So many factors at play.
It's all connected.
So how do these terroir differences actually show up in the wines?
Well, let's think back to the chameleon idea.
Syrah, reflecting its environment.
Those cooler climates and granite soils in the northern Rhône.
They tend to produce wines that are
More delicate in their fruit aromas.
higher acidity, right?
That bright, vibrant acidity.
And firmer tannins.
Giving structure.
And those peppery notes are really prominent.
The hallmark of Rhône Syrah.
Okay, and then you've got Australia.
Warmer climates, clay soils,
So the wines are
more concentrated fruit.
ripe, Almost jammy
Softer tannins, easier to drink.
and fuller-bodied overall.
Yeah, that's the general trend.
But we have to remember those maritime influences too, right?
Like in McLaren Vale.
Adding some freshness, some nuance.
Absolutely, it's not always black and white.
So if we were to paint a picture, a really broad picture, what's the typical Rhône Syrah profile versus Australian Shiraz?
Okay, big picture thinking.
Like if you had to sum it up in a few words.
I'd say Rhône Syrah is all about elegance, spice, savory notes, red and black fruits,
Yep.
firm tannins, and that vibrant acidity.
Okay, that's a good snapshot.
And Australian Shiraz is more fruit-forward, ripe black fruit, sweet spices, softer tannins, balanced acidity.
So one is more about finesse,
And the other is about richness.
but we know it's more complicated than that.
There's a whole spectrum of styles within each region.
Absolutely, it's not one size fits all.
But those are some general starting points.
So if someone wanted to do their own tasting, compare wines from both regions, what should they be looking for?
This is where it gets fun.
Engaging your senses.
What aromas are jumping out at you?
Black pepper. Floral notes.
Or is it more ripe, jammy fruit, vanilla from the oak?
Yeah, what's the first impression?
And then the tannins, how do they feel?
Grippy, smooth,
Does the acidity make your mouth water?
or is it more mellow?
Pay attention to those details.
It's all about those nuances.
And discovering what you like.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the people behind the wines, the actual practices in the vineyard and the winery.
The human touch.
How do vineyard management practices differ between the Rhône and Australia?
Well, the scale is a big difference.
Rhône is often smaller, more traditional,
Manual labor, centuries of tradition,
real respect for the land,
expressing that specific terroir.
different training systems adapted to each site.
It's all about tailoring the approach.
And in Australia, while there are definitely small producers, it's generally
Larger scale, more technology.
efficiency is key
They're experimenting with new techniques.
to optimize yield, manage the climate.
VSK is common, and irrigation is often essential.
So two different philosophies in a way.
Meeting different challenges.
And what about winemaking itself? Are there any big contrasts in how they handle the grapes in the winery,
There are some key differences.
reflecting those different approaches?
In the Rhône, you often see indigenous yeasts, whole bunch fermentation,
Adding complexity, structure,
gentle extraction to avoid harsh tannins, older oak barrels.
letting the grape speak for itself,
And in Australia, it's more about controlled fermentation.
selected yeasts, temperature control,
Varied maceration techniques, depending on the goal.
and the oak is often newer, smaller barrel.
Imparting more of that oak character.
So one is more hands-off, the other is more interventionist.
But both are aiming for quality.
It's just two different paths to get there.
And those winemaking choices, they have a big impact on the final wine.
Give me an example.
Well, those whole bunches in the Rhône, that's where those peppery, savory notes come from.
Makes sense.
And the type of oak used, the age of the oak, that affects the flavor profile.
Vanilla, coconut, all those nuances.
And maceration, how long the skins are in contact, that determines color, tannins, body.
It's like a recipe.
Each step building on the last.
The winemaker's kind of like the chef.
Orchestrating the whole process.
What would you say is the ultimate role of the winemaker in both regions?
They're guardians of the grape.
Stewards of the land.
They're trying to express both the grape's potential and the uniqueness of the terroir.
Balancing tradition and innovation
Making those crucial decisions.
to create something special.
A wine that reflects its place.
Okay, let's talk about the future. How long can we expect these wines to age?
Aging potential is a good question.
Can we lay down a bottle of Rhône Syrah and expect it to be good in 20 years?
Well, the top wines from the Northern Rhône, especially Hermitage and Côte Rôtie, they can age for decades.
Wow, that's impressive.
Concentrated fruit, firm structure, acidity, it all contributes.
And Australian Shiraz.
The high-quality stuff, especially from those warmer regions like Barossa, can also age for 10, 20 years or more,
But not all wines are meant for aging.
right? Some
Yeah.
are meant to be enjoyed young.
Fresh, vibrant fruit.
Those are more approachable early drinking styles.
So it depends on the wine.
Absolutely.
And for those wines that are meant to age, what happens over time? How do they evolve in the bottle?
Well, the fresh fruit aromas will start to change.
They become more complex.
Secondary and tertiary aromas emerge.
Like what?
Leather, spice, earthiness, dried fruit.
Those mature flavors
The tannins soften, become more integrated.
and the acidity mellows.
The color might change too. More garnet, brick-like hues.
It's like watching a painting evolve.
It's a beautiful process.
Okay, Practical question. Any tips for storing and serving these wines?
Well, storage is crucial, especially if you're aging wines.
What do we need to do?
Cool, dark place, consistent temperature, moderate humidity.
And for wines with cork, store them on their side.
So the cork stays moist.
And serving temperature.
Rhône Syrah a bit cooler to highlight the aromas and freshness.
Australian Shiraz, maybe a touch warmer.
To bring out the richness.
And decanting. What's the deal with that?
Young, tannic wines, decanting can help soften them.
And older wines, it removes sediment.
So you don't get a mouthful of grit.
Okay, that's all really helpful advice. Now let's talk about the fun part. Food pairing.
My favorite subject.
Syrah, Shiraz, they're both pretty versatile, right?
Incredibly so.
But are there any specific cuisines they work well with?
Oh, tons.
Let's break it down.
Rhône Syrah, with its structure and spice, it's classic with French cuisine.
Oh yeah, like what?
Roasted red meats, lamb, beef,
I'm getting hungry again.
game, duck, those richer dishes.
Makes sense, those tannins cutting through the fat.
Exactly. And Australian Shiraz with its bolder fruit.
That's great with grilled meats, barbecue.
Stews, even some spicier Asian dishes.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought of that.
It can work surprisingly well.
And both styles can handle spice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Middle Eastern food, Mediterranean food.
American barbecue, even Indian curries.
The possibilities are endless.
So any regional pairings that come to mind? Like if I'm drinking a Northern Rhône Syrah.
Roasted lamb with herbs, rosemary, thyme, that kind of thing.
Sounds delicious.
Duck with a fig sauce.
Rich and decadent.
Or a hearty game stew.
Classic pairings.
And for Australian Shiraz, maybe grilled Wagyu beef.
Oh yeah, that marbling.
Smoky BBQ ribs, that's always a winner.
And for the truly adventurous?
Kangaroo steak.
Wow, that's a new one.
Gotta keep it authentic.
Okay, so we've got all these pairings, but what's the underlying logic? Why do certain wines work with certain foods?
It's about balance.
The weight of the wine, the structure.
Matching the richness of the food.
So those firm Rhône tannins cut through the fat.
And the softer Australian tannins don't overpower delicate dishes.
And then there's the aroma profile.
Peppery Syrah with peppery food.
Fruity Shiraz with corresponding flavors. It's like a puzzle.
Finding the perfect pieces.
Okay, let's zoom out for a minute and look at the big picture. Syrah, Shiraz, they're pretty important on the world stage, right?
They're global players, for sure.
Why is that?
Well, their adaptability is a big factor.
Growing in so many different climates.
And producing such a range of styles.
From elegant to powerful.
There's something for everyone.
And that appeals to a wide audience.
Different tastes, different price points.
So the Rhône Valley in Australia, they're kind of the leaders, right?
They are the heavy hitters.
The Rhône is the historical home.
Where it all began.
And those wines are all about terroir.
Elegance, finesse.
And Australia, they're producing a lot of wine.
Huge volumes.
And their Shiraz is known for its approachability.
Fruit forward, easy to enjoy.
Two different but equally valid approaches.
Two sides of the same coin.
So looking ahead, what are the challenges and trends we're seeing with Syrah and Shiraz?
Well, sustainability is a big one.
Consumers are more conscious than ever.
Organic viticulture, biodynamic practices.
Water conservation, energy efficiency.
It's about protecting the environment.
And climate change is a factor too, isn't it?
It's impacting grape ripening, acidity levels.
So winemakers are having to adapt.
Finding new ways to maintain quality.
And there's always competition from other grapes.
Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Pinot Noir.
They're all vying for attention.
It's a crowded market.
But Syrah and Shiraz are holding their own.
And what's interesting is that we're seeing them planted in new places.
Beyond the Rhône in Australia?
South Africa, the U.S., Chile, Argentina.
So the world of Syrah and Shiraz is expanding.
It's an exciting time.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Mm-hmm.
What are the key takeaways? What do you want our listeners to remember about Syrah and Shiraz?
Well, the first thing is their incredible adaptability.
The chameleon grape.
They reflect their environment.
And that leads to these distinct styles.
Rhône versus Australia, two very different expressions.
Shaped by terroir and winemaking.
And understanding those differences is key to appreciating the wines.
It's about going beyond the label.
Recognizing the nuances.
And finding what you like.
Exactly.
So to leave you with a final thought, we encourage you to keep exploring.
The world of Syrah and Shiraz is vast.
Taste wines from both regions. Compare them side by side.
Experience those differences firsthand.
See if you can identify those regional characteristics.
And think about what you enjoy.
What speaks to your palate?
What resonates with you?
It's a journey of discovery.
And we're just getting started.
Cheers to that.
Cheers!
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.